for coming out. I'm very happy to be here. So, what I'm going to present today is something I call the Marketo secret sauce. And essentially, it's a case study of how Marketo is practicing modern digital marketing techniques to grow our own business. And we IPO'd last May. We're currently just under $100 million of revenue. And we are one of the fastest growing software companies of all time. So we're doing something right. So hopefully this is a little bit of some of the practical techniques that you can use, that's sort of based on our own lessons learned. I'll be sharing examples of our actual campaigns. I'll be showing you our real data. You will be able to get a copy of all the slides afterwards as well. So those of you can pay a little bit more attention to listening as opposed to taking screenshots of the screens. So, you're going to listen to me speaking for the next hour or so. So let me just take a minute to introduce myself a little bit more completely. I'm a dad. I'm married with 2 children. And I'm also the founder of Marketo, or one of the co-founders. The interesting fact is that we started Marketo the same month that my son was born. Scott and I were just talking about the fact that he's got twins on the way, and the first thing I said is get help. So Marketo, my son, born the exact same month. Makes it really easy to keep track of how the company is. They both actually turn 8 next week, which is pretty exciting. So another interesting fun fact is this is where I was born. That on the map is Eritrea in Africa. At the time when I was born, it was still Ethiopia. It was before the Civil War. People asked me, John, are you born in Ethiopia? And the answer is I wanted to be close to my parents. Sometimes it takes time to settle in. So interesting, my birth certificate says that I was born in an Army post office in New York because I was born on an Army base. Which means, just like John McCain, technically I can run for president. Well, so I did again. That's nothing with marketing. What has more relevance for marketing in today's topic is the fact that I studied physics for my undergraduate degree here. I spent my summers doing research on fusion at the Lawrence Livermore National Labs in California, where I earned the equivalent of a top secret clearance from the Department of Energy. And I came this close to taking an MIT PhD program position. But instead, I sort of went into business and found myself in marketing. And I don't regret the fact that I studied physics, because I think the rigorous, left-brained, quantitative way that helped train me to think is one of the key things that makes me a good marketer today. I think you'll see that in this presentation. A lot of numbers, a lot of analysis. And I think that quantitative skills combined with the ability to write and communicate are frankly 2 of the most important skills for modern digital marketers. And so somehow, without actually intending to have become a marketer, I ended up with probably the best training I could have had in my current career. So let's dive into the presentation and how Marketo does our own marketing. And it starts with a philosophy. And a philosophy that is both imbued, this is our topics. We're going to talk about philosophy, and we're going to go through the techniques we use, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, as well as then the metric sectors. So as I said, I promise a philosophy. The philosophy of our marketing, as well as the philosophy behind our product, was based upon a belief that the way people buy products, these digitally empowered buyers, is dramatically different, and therefore we have to change how we market and sell to them. And this is pretty obvious stuff today, so I'm not going to go on too much. But if you think about it, even 10 years ago, if you wanted to research marketing software like we sell, or jet engines, or a new healthcare plan, or any sort of complex purchase, you couldn't easily get access to that information. Right? Remember, this abundance of information we have today is a relatively recent phenomenon. Think about the fact that when Marketo got started in 2006, Facebook was still just for students. Right? Twitter didn't exist yet. Right? The iPhone didn't exist yet. This wasn't that long ago. This is just within my son's lifetime. Right? Even Google, which is now ubiquitous, only really became a mainstream application in 2001. So this phenomenon of information abundantly available at our fingertips anytime we want, compare and contrast products, anywhere in the store, this is all relatively recent. Most marketing processes that many people have grew up with what I sort of call the mad era of marketing, before we had this information In that era, buyers couldn't easily get access to the information they wanted. And so if marketing generated a quote-unquote lead, you had to pass that lead over to the salesperson. Because that was the only way the buyer could get the information they wanted. And the salesperson expected to have to talk to somebody who wasn't yet really a buyer because, again, that was the only way to get the information. Now it's obviously very, very different. People do research before they want to talk to sales. There's lots of studies out there. This is one of the more interesting charts, at least from the corporate executive board. And essentially, if you look across all of these different studies, what you find is that people today are somewhere between 50 to 90% done with their buying process before they want to engage, talk to a salesperson. They have so much access to information, they are actively resisting sales interactions until they feel like they have equal information to what the salesperson is. That's a big, profound change. So at Marketo, we essentially said, all right, if the buyer doesn't want to talk to sales until, let's say, they're 2/3 done with the process, then marketing has to step up and own that 2/3 of the buyer's journey, right? And sales can have the last third, but marketing has to have a more explicit role in the end-to-end revenue process. In the old days, maybe marketing only had 10%, and then sales took over. Today, it's a much bigger process. So everything we did was based upon this foundation of don't pass these to sales before they're ready. Marketing owns the relationship in the area. So, let's talk about what that looks like. Because the first thing we said we had to do, if marketing is going to own a bigger piece of the revenue cycle, I want it to be as rigorous about our stages of the buying process as sales is about theirs. Most salespeople are pretty good about having a sales methodology and a sales process where they've broken it up into stages. And a sales executive can tell you, I need this much in this stage in order to achieve my outcomes in that stage. So I wanted to have that same level of rigor for the marketing process. Break it up into stages, track movement and flow through the stages. So this is what we came up for Marketo's own revenue cycle. Broken into 3 buckets. Tofu is your top of the funnel. You don't want your tofu to be blank. I'll talk about that later. Mofu is your middle of the funnel, developing leads until they're sales ready. And then Mofu is bottom of the funnel, kind of when sales is engaged. I'll walk through each of these stages because it's sort of foundational to a lot of what is going to follow on later in this presentation. You may have slightly different stages for your business, and that's okay. What I think is essential is that you define these stages. Marketing and sales sits down and agrees what each of these things mean, what is the definition for when somebody moves from stage to stage, and what are the rules or service level agreements for how you respond to people in each stage. So for us, the first stage is just awareness. We build our brand with content and with thought leadership and with expertise. And so that's how we build awareness. We'll talk more about that. We have a stage after that we call friend. So friend is obviously somebody who's been exposed to our content more than one time. It starts to build an affinity or a likeness. Now the red line represents when people enter our database, when we actually get their personally identifiable contact information. This is where I think semantics really, really matter. Right? These people are not leads. To a salesperson, a lead means something. Right? So the CRM systems and a lot of lead vendors are frankly jacked up when they call these things leads. Right? It's a misnomer. Just because somebody throws their card in your bowl at a trade show doesn't mean they're a lead. They're not looking to buy your product necessarily. So semantically, we call these people names. All we know at that point is we have their information. The next step is then engage. So someone who's engaged is in our database and they've had a meaningful interaction with us such that they know they're in our database. So what I mean by that is, let's say it's a big trade show. And we're just scanning people's badges like crazy, right? Because we want to get as many scans as we can, which we do. But the scans just enter in our system's names. And those people may not even remember we scanned their badge. So only if they click on our follow-up campaigns or they visit our website, do they move to engage, right? And we want to, until they do that, right, it's sort of irrelevant the fact that we happen to have their name. Once somebody's engaged, we use our demographic lead scoring to figure out, is this a qualified care about. That would report to management, that would report up to the board. Anything below target, we think is essentially irrelevant as a management measure. Right? Only matters we're building our database with qualified PhD. Now, almost by definition, these targets are not yet leads. They're qualified potential buyers, right? But not yet actual leads. So we have to develop the relationship and keep in touch with them until they actually, quote unquote, become leads. For us, we define a marketing qualified lead when somebody's lead score gets to 100 points. Now, I'll show you the details of how we define our lead scoring. But essentially, we're only moving them to a lead status when they're qualified and they show a significant amount of behavioral activity or interest. That's the first time we call them. We have a team of sales development reps that call people up on the phone. Now, for a variety of reasons that hopefully I'll explain later, it turns out that we want to have a fair number of MQLs, even if they're still not actually sales ready. And partly that's just because the human touch, having a person talk to a potential customer, is part of the nurture process. And so a big chunk of those leads are not qualified as sales ready and go back for more nurturing, and that's actually okay, that's a good thing. About 10% of them do get qualified as being sales ready and get passed over to one of our account executives. So that's the SDR, the sales rep handoff. At that point, our sales team has 1 week to follow up, talk to that lead, and decide, is this something that they're going to accept into their pipeline? And if they do, that's when they create the opportunity in the CRM system. We use Salesforce. Now that's an important thing when they create that sales opportunity, right? Because then accepting it and creating the opportunity is how the sales development rep and how marketing gets paid. I carry a quota, the marketing team carries a quota for the number of opportunities created by our sales team. There's sort of two interesting implications. First of all, it means that marketing is meeting our quota. There should be enough pipeline for sales to meet their quota. And second of all, we can't create our own opportunities. Only sales can. So it's a check and balance. And having that set up right was turned out as one of our most important things that we did to build marketing sales alignment. Right? But that check and balance in the whole system. So it works really, really well for us. So that's what our end-to-end revenue cycle looks like. So now let me do with the rest of the presentation. Kind of go back to the beginning. Oh, I was script up. I'm going to go back to the beginning and talk about kind of what we do at each of the different stages. But before I get into that, I do want to make a point, which is that this is a problem of operating at scale. Right? And it's not like we're trying to manage these relationships and move people through this process when 1,000 people or even 10,000 people. We have about 900,000 people in our database. Some of our customers have 30 million people in their database. And so, if you don't have the right technology to manage this whole process, to keep track of everything and enable things, I think it ends up being like Lucille Ball's chocolate factory. Right? When the chocolates are moving down the conveyor belt slowly, everything's fine and good. But then as they get faster and faster and more scale, quickly becomes a big mess. You're shoving chocolates and leaves out of your dress, and that's not for anybody. So this presentation isn't meant to be a commercial or an advertisement for Marketo or even marketing automation technology in general. But I do want to make the explicit point that a lot of the things I'm talking about today really can't be done at scale without technology. Okay, so now let's go back to the top. That little fancy transition is called Vortex, which is a fun transition to the latest version of PowerPoint. So let's talk about the top of the funnel. And what's working for Marketo at the top of the funnel. And as I said earlier, we really focus on content to build our brand and our awareness. And the reason why is because we moved from this world of information scarcity to a world of information abundance. In a world of information abundance, that creates a scarcity about which consumes information, which is attention. Right? Now, most marketing that evolved in the Madden era is essentially about renting attention that somebody else has built. So, the Super Bowl, perfect example, right? They get all these people, billion people to watch this thing, and then they rent out 30-second slots for $4.5 million, right? Essentially, they're renting people's attention during that time period. I'll show you. But it's becoming less and less and less effective and harder and harder to do well in the era of information abundance. And so, what you have to do in addition is to own your own attention. And owning your own attention means publishing content. I started writing our blog at Marketo before we wrote a single line of code for the product. And now I have 100,000 people every month who read it. Right? That is an audience I can talk to directly. It would cost me at least $10,000 per shot to reach a similar size and similarly quality audience. Right? Now I do it many times because I own that asset that I built. We stopped doing a lot of third-party trade shows. We took a lot of money out of sponsoring other events and instead put it into our own captive events. Right? Where we can get 100 people in a hotel room for $20,000. We'll have them listen to us, our customers, for 3 hours, and then give them some drinks and food. Like, that's not 20 grand. So for the price of a crappy booth at a trade show, we can have 3 hours of undivided attention. Again, that's the power of owned attention. That's a big part of what we're doing. So we create a lot of content. What kind of content do we create? We break our content, we think about it at three stages. Early, mid, and late stage content. This framework is very important for our process. Most companies create the majority of their content in the early stage. We create the majority of our content in the late stage. We create the majority of our content in the early stage. So early stage content is either going to be educational or entertaining to your target audience, even if they never buy your product or one of your competitors. So for us, it's just about how to be a better marketer. Right? It's not about marketing technology, it's not about Marketo itself. The goal of early stage content is to build a brand, to build awareness. Right? And so we never gate that content behind the forum. Right? Because the goal of that content isn't to generate leads. The goal of that content is to go wide and broad and have you see it, you share it with your friend, and you link to it, and then it gets picked up somewhere else, and so on and so on. Right? Because it's building that trust, it's building that awareness for our solution. Now, mid-stage content is the tools that we create to help a buyer find us when they happen to be looking for marketing technology, to help them with their buying process. So a buyer's guide, an RFP template, third-party content works great here, like analyst reports. And we always hate that content because essentially, if you're looking for that kind of information, we want to make sure that we talk. And then late-stage content is the stuff that's about us. And wherever possible, we're going to not gate that because, frankly, if you want to learn more about us, I don't want to get in your way. Right? I want to make that as easy as possible. So we create lots of content under that area. So moving beyond just content now, this is, sometimes I call it the money slide because it has money in it. This is actually, what's generating targets for us at the top of our funnel across, so this is a screenshot right out of our analytics tool. So across various channels, what's the number of targets we generated from that channel? What is the investment per target? I'm only counting program dollars there in places where there's a dollar. So I'm not counting people time or anything like that. It's just the amount I'm spending to rent the attention. That I'm paying somebody else. Percent opportunity is how many of those targets become an opportunity. Index. Pay attention here, because I always explain this, and people at the end of the presentation ask me, what was that index again? So index is just taking the percent opportunity number and normalizing everything to 1. So if an index is 2.5, it means that those inbound event targets are 2.5 times as likely versus average to become an opportunity. Okay? And then based off is how long does it take them on average? How long do I have to nurture prospects from that channel into becoming an opportunity? So let's talk about some of these. The first thing that's interesting to know is how many of those channels and how many of those targets come from content. Right? Where content is essentially the core driving author, if you will. The majority. So again, I'm pointing out how important your content is. Now, anybody looking at these numbers sees, the thing that really stands out is that inbound and web is just awesome. Those prospects are by far the best ones we can get. Great conversion rates, fast movement, and it kind Now, there are some companies who would therefore say, inbound, all inbound is great. And, oh, sorry. I keep adding slides up here in the transitions. So one of the things that we're doing around inbound to make it even more effective is we're starting to use personalization on the website to create different experiences for different people. These three buttons at the bottom here are our most important calls to action. Free trial, take a demo, contact sales. What they say. So if you come to our website and you're a regular prospect, that's what you're going to see. You come to our website and our sales team is actively engaged with you, you're not going to see that free trial button. Right? So we dynamically change that. Why? Because, frankly, if we're actually talking to you about a deal, we don't want to slow down a sales cycle by talking about a trial. If you come to our website and you're a customer, right, you don't care about free trials and demos if you're a customer. So the buttons change. So you register for Summit, check out our upcoming events, and log into the product. So we're doing a lot more of that customization for relationships on the site, right? And again, what we're trying to do is tweak every last ounce of that wonderful inbound channel as possible, right? But it's not just about inbound, right? If all we did was inbound, I would be missing out on an awful lot of other pipeline and other opportunities. So I think about it like a portfolio. Think about your stock portfolio, right? You wouldn't put all your money in one stock, because that would be stupid and risky. Instead, a good stock picker does a portfolio of stocks with different risks and maturities and different styles. That's what we do. Now, to have all those programs, it turns out we run about 80 to 100 different programs each month. So to us, a program might be a webinar, it might be an email send, it might be a trade show, it might be a content syndication initiative, and so on. So 80 to 100 of those is a lot, especially when you realize that there's only about 6 people on the team responsible for running all those programs. Right? So one of the things that we do to sort of make all that work is we have templated a standard program template for each channel. So we have our standard webinar template, our standard, and I'm talking about in the tool itself, with the landing pages and the emails and so on. Our standard event template. And then we have the new one, we just clone it. And then the other thing that we've done is if you clone it, you clone all the emails, all the landing pages and so on. And then we parameterize key elements of each of these things. So the date of the event, the location of the event, the login URL, whatever it is. Those are all pulled out, so that way when you just go in and change April to say June, all the emails and landing pages update automatically at once. That kind of tokenization is what we call it, gives the team the scale to operate 80 to 100 programs. So running through some of these other channels, the sponsored email is one that I actually have very mixed feelings about. Right? So this is, for example, if let's say you subscribe to Marketing or some other third-party, BMA magazine, back when BMA magazine existed, and they would send one email a week, for example, to all their subscribers on behalf of a vendor. So it's essentially them saying, hey, you should download Marketo's definitive guide. Okay, that's what I mean by sponsored email. It generates a lot of targets, and it's the single biggest pipeline driver for us in absolute dollars. Okay, so it's not something I want to turn off, but on the other hand, it's not like those prospects are very great either. Okay, so it's sort of it's working for us at scale, right? And it's not taking the individual programs. The stuff that really works for us are webinars, pay-per-click, selected trade shows, like the Dreamforce conference, Salesforce is a good one for us, and then virtual events tend to work well for us in terms of the mix of cost and conversion and stuff. If you're paying attention, you'll see here that we're doing paid social, which is a kind of a form of display advertising, and then regular old display advertising for the target. But we're spending a fair amount per target with relatively low conversion rates. So why are we doing that? Are we stupid? Maybe. But I think what's going a lot of those ads, a lot of spend that we're doing in those channels is about brand. It doesn't even have a call to action. We're not trying to do a direct response. And so in a very real way that's hard to measure, it's feeding back to that impact at the top, which is the good stuff. That's an overview of some of our top of the funnel. Let's kind of move on to the middle funnel. So we've generated all these targets. Targets are great, they're wonderful. But that's not what sales wants. Right? Sales doesn't want names, they don't want targets, they want leads. And to a salesperson, a lead, is not quite somebody who's ready to sign, but somebody who's really ready to engage with them in a real life. So this is a little bit old research from Ray today. It's probably 5 years ago or so. But I think the basic finding is about right, which is if you generate a bunch of new targets for your company, on average, 25% of them make you sales ready, 25% of them make you no good, 50% of them will be in that could be good one day, just not ready yet bucket. But there is a distribution, and quite a few companies have lower than 25%. Marketo is 2%. Right, so only 2% of the targets we generate each month are ready to go to sales in that first month when we meet. And as I showed you earlier, on average, it's a bunch of days, right, before they actually are ready to go to sales. Almost a year on average. So we need a process to keep in touch with these people, who are going to be qualified buyers someday, but not yet. We need to date them, essentially, before we call the question. So that whole process is what we in the industry call lead nurturing. Just keeping in touch with people until they're actually ready to buy. Right? So that's what I want to talk about. How are we doing our lead nurturing? But before I talk about how, I'm going to talk about the value of it. So we did an A/B test. Lead nurturing is hard to measure sales. It's not any one email. It's the process of many interactions over time. So the only really way to test it is do an A/B split. Nurture some people, don't nurture some other people, see what happens. So when we did that, we found that whether or not we nurtured them had almost no difference in terms of sort of people moving fast to lead, but had a very big difference over the next, whether or not they became leads over the next 12 months. About 3x improvement in getting those non-sales ready people to become sales ready leads over that period of time. So that's pretty good value. So how do you do it? So I wrote a whole book on lead nurturing called The Definitive Guide to Lead Nurturing. You can download it from our website. But if I have to summarize it to a single word, it's relevance. Because if you're not relevant, they're going to opt out. Or more likely just emotionally opt out. You're going to stop paying attention. So the most important thing in your nurturing is relevance. So how do you be relevant in your communications? Big topic, lots of people talk about it. So it turns out that one of the most important things to be relevant to your audience is to be more segmented. Now, again, lots of people have talked about that. This is what our data looks like. What we've done here is we've shown the correlation between the size of an email send and then the engagement of that send. Where engagement score is a metric that we calculate. It combines open, click, unsubscribe, conversion, a couple other things, into a single number to essentially say how engaging was that send. Okay? What you see is that there's a direct relationship. The more smaller your segment, i.e. the more segmented, the more specific, the more engaging that send ends up being. In fact, the R-squared on that curve turns out to be 0.23. So 23% of the engagement of an email is explained simply by how small the list is, right? How segmented it is. Right? So it's important to segment your lists into unique and specific relevant audiences. So we do that across these two dimensions. Right? The first dimension is where are they in the buyer's journey? Early, mid, late, or customer. Right? Which, by the way, maps exactly to the content mapping that I talked about earlier. Which is a good thing, makes it easier. But that late-stage buyer wants to hear about Marketo. And whereas that early-stage buyer would be really turned off by information about us. They just want information about how to be a better marketer, educational and entertaining. The other dimension here is buyer persona. Well, there's lots of ways to cut that other dimension. By industry, that is a really good way to do it. By persona is a good way to do it. To be honest, we haven't done as good a job on the persona as I'd like. So for us, we just do is what it looks like in our tool. You know, you have the early, mid, late stage tracks. This is for the marketing audience. And then it's just really easy to drag new emails and new programs into it, reorder it, and then the system takes care of each week, making sure that people every 2 weeks at 7 a.m. get the right piece of content, the next right piece of content. So that's I would say that's our base nurture, right? But then we layer some things on top of it to make it even more relevant. The first thing we layer on top of it is we use dynamic content to personalize individual emails to be more specific. So the main thing there is it might be the same email offering a particular white paper, but people in healthcare will have a different copy and different image to promote that same white paper as people in financial services. And so it's dynamically using industry not to say the overall tracks, but to customize the specific email. We do similar things by industry or by company size in terms of which case studies we talk about, and so on. Now, behavioral targeting turns out to be a really important nuance in kind of getting all this relevance and nurturing right. So there's lots of research, this is from Marketo Sherpa, that shows, essentially when you can target your emails based upon who somebody is, that's good. But when you can target them based upon their behaviors and what they've done, that's even better. Because their behaviors are more likely to indicate they're interested in than their demographics. So the way we do that in Marketo is we have our basic tracks, and we've also created these topic of interest tracks. One on email, one on content, and so on. And then we watch your behaviors. So if you attend an event about email marketing, that's a sign to us that you're probably interested in email marketing. If you download a white paper about social media, it shows that you're probably interested in social media, and so on. And when we see these behavioral signs of your interests, we take you out of the generic nurture track and we put you into one of these specific topic of nurture tracks. And those tend to be shorter, so 12 weeks later or 15 weeks later, when you get to the end, right, you might run out and we'll take you back out and put you back into the regular one. Right? But what we found is that these topic of interest tracks have about 50% better open rates, 50% better click open rates, and to the wonders of multiplicative math, that means they're about 1.5 times more engaging. So behaviorally targeting your nurture tracks works really well, at least for us. So that's nurturing. Vortex means like to change the topic. So now let's talk about kind of the other part of the lead funnel, which is the scoring and the lead management. All right, we're nurturing them, we're keeping in touch. We haven't sent them to sales, so how do we decide when is the time to send them to sales? So scoring for us is really ultimately about 3 key dimensions: fit, interest, and buying assumption. Fit is the demographics and the firmographics. It tells me, am I interested in you? Right? And we saw that way back at the beginning when we figured out who was a target. Interest tells me, are you engaged with us? Right? Do you like us? Are you reading my content? Are you coming to my website? Are you reading my, and so on. And, in many ways, that's what you need to have in relationships. I need to like you, you need to like me, we're all set. But, I can like you, you can like me, you can also be married. Right? So the timing can be longer. Right? So that's why we also have this third dimension of buying dimension. Right? Are you at a point in your process in which you're kind of open to engaging with things? Right? And really what you have is when you have all 3 of those, that's when you know it's kind of a good lead. So on the fit, we look at pretty much things you would expect us to look at, like title and company size and data quality attributes. Some things add points, some things take points away. But the main point to make on fit is that we don't get the data usually by asking it on forms. Our forms are really short. We just ask for your name, your email, your role, and your company. And so a lot of all this other information, like what CRM system do you use, we get using data pen type of services. We get your industry off of data pen, we get your company size off of data pen. And then there's these cool technologies out there. There's something called Bilchmith. There's a company called Lead Ledger that will let you essentially buy lists of domains of which companies use which technologies. And they do that just by scanning the web, calling the web, they're looking for tracking code on the site, right? So I can go buy a list of domains where they have found Salesforce.com code on the site, right? We take those domains, we put them into our system, and then we use that to identify who is a CRM customer, and we give them more points. That's what happens. So that's our demographic scoring. The behavioral scoring is based on, or the interest in buying is based upon your behaviors. So the engagement stuff is pretty straightforward. As I said, you read the blog, you go to the website, that kind of stuff. The buying intent is based upon looking for the specific behaviors that we've shown are correlated with that buying activity. So going to our pricing page, watching demos. It used to be searching for the keyword Marketo was a really, or our competitor brand names, was a really good one. Because when you search for brand names, you're further the buying cycle. Now that Google masks most of that stuff, it's not as useful, but we still pick up off the pay-per-click, so it's better than nothing. So once you have all these scores, and this is conceptual, but essentially we try to look at, the better your fit, the better your behaviors, the more likely you are to be a lead, but sort of balancing the two. Now, in reality, what we do is this kind of chart was way too confusing for salespeople, right? And when we introduced this, I didn't mean that to be like derogatory. They lost track of what's a lead, right? Because there were sort of too many dimensions for them to think about. And so what we did is sort of combine all these behaviors into a single number, right? That essentially says if somebody's above 100 points, you know they're going to be in that area here, right? And it's a lot easier for sales to know, yep, that's a 100-point lead. Great, right? So that's sort of how we define when something is a lead and therefore gets past the sales development reps. Once it is passed to the sales development reps, then it's qualified. This is, we kick off the no lead left behind process. So this is the service level agreements I alluded to earlier. Essentially, they get notified, and then they have 24 hours to call that lead. Because think about it, this is a really qualified lead at this point. Marketing generated them, marketing nurtured them, marketing scored them, which the score was high enough, and then an SDR called them and said, yep, this is something really worth sales talking to, and now we're asking sales to follow up. So it's not unreasonable for us to ask for a 24-hour response rate. If they don't, they get a reminder. At 48 hours, the reminder goes to them, their boss. At 72 hours, it goes to them, the boss, the executives, or the CEO. And you don't get that email very often, for obvious reasons. So this service level agreement process ensures that nothing gets stuck in the system. Everything is moving, everything is flowing, which is valuable for follow-up, and it also means we get the right metrics. Right? Nothing ever just sits sitting undetermined status. This is what it looks like inside Salesforce. So stars show the fit, the flames show the behavioral score. So rep can very easily see kind of what's going on with the lead. And then they get this list of interesting moments. So this is where we sort of noted on the record what has this person done that's relevant to a salesperson, so they can at a glance figure out what's going on with this account and therefore have more relevant human conversations. Okay, so that's a little bit about our end-to-end process, tofu, mofu, bofu. Let me wrap up with talking metrics and how we're measuring this whole thing and how we're driving marketing credibility accordingly. We can take a question.
Just real quick, are those salespeople on the phone or are they field?
Okay, the question is, are they salespeople on the phone or the field? So for us, the SDRs, so the people who qualify leads, are all phone. And then once it's qualified lead to a salesperson, for us it's hybrid. So, in our SMB business, it's probably primarily phone. But at times the person will get on the plane if appropriate or necessary. And for enterprise, it's probably primarily in person, but it's some phone assistance. All right, so metrics. Arguably, one of the key drivers for me to start Marketo was that I wanted to help elevate the role of marketing in the enterprise. When marketing only owned 10% of the revenue cycle, you could imagine why not 100% fast. Now, the problem though is that measuring marketing impact on revenue is hard. It's easy to measure sales impact on revenue. You just look at how much they close. Right? But marketing is hard because there's all these different marketing touches that affect somebody. Right? Nobody buys just for that one trade show, for that one marketing. And it's not just one person, there's people attached to the account. Right? So the first thing you have to do to unscramble that complexity is just make sure that you can track all the interactions that marketing has with an account. Right? But even that's easier said than done. We use the opportunity as Point Analyzer, our tool, to help track those interactions. So what you're looking at is the bottom axis is time, the vertical axis is the cumulative number of marketing interactions. And then in this case, there's two folks that are attached to the opportunity, because the salespeople tend to attach to people that they're actually talking to, Manny and Jacob in this case. And it looks like marketing really had no impact on that account, because this blue part represents when from lead to opportunity. And green is when they're an active opportunity. This is based upon a real account. So if you just look at this one in the CRM system, you say, wow, marketing didn't do much to create a deal. Right? But then you notice there's Sarah Miller over here. She's a contact on the account, but she's not attached to the opportunity. Right? And if you look at her, she's had 11 marketing interactions, and you mouse over, she's the CEO. If you check her, now all of a sudden you get a different picture of the account, where you see that marketing actually had a fair number of interactions with Sarah in the lead development stage. In this case, we saw her at a trade show, she came to our website, she subscribed to our blog, she got a couple blog posts and so on. And it turns out what actually happened here is Sarah, right around here, got very engaged with us and then told Manny to come check us out. If you don't have the ability to track all those interactions across all the people in the account, and then properly allocate your marketing to that, you're going to miss out on things like that. And so we think it's important. So step one is track all the touches. Step two is then allocate the dollars to all the touches. So we do essentially an even success-based allocation. So we count up all the times marketing successfully influenced somebody on that account. And then we split up the dollars evenly. So here you see an example. There were 3 people and 4 successes. So we take the dollars, divide them up by 4, and we split them across all those different things. In this case, those 4 successes went to just 3 programs. Right? So 25 to the seminar, 25 to the 50 to the trade show. Now we can debate all day long, is this a good way of allocating dollars? Is even a good way? Right? Well, the trade show was the most recent, shouldn't that get more competitive? You know, the reality is, it's never going to be perfect. Sort of doing a full regression or test and control analysis. But I think this is still better than allocating all the first touch or the last touch. Okay? So that's how we do it. And this is what the numbers end up looking like. So this is the other one on the slide. It's similar to what we saw before, but instead of targets, here we're really just looking at dollars and pipeline. So the similar channels. The investment is the amount that we invested in that channel. Again, only program dollars. $5. I'm going to go soapbox for a step. Remember before when semantically I was talking about names or names? Right? And those words matter. I think calling that investment matters. Because as marketers, if we talk about cost and cost per lead, we're telling the world that we're a cost leader. Right? If we talk about an investment, and return on an investment, we're telling people that marketing is something that drives return, and that is worthy of an investment. So you will generally not see me talk about cost and cost per lead instead of investment. So investment per program. Then how much pipeline did we create off of programs in that channel using that multi-touch attribution methodology I just showed you on the prior slide? Right, which is what I mean by the MT. How many opportunities did we create off of that channel? And then the MT ratio is the ratio of pipeline divided by investment. So for the paid channels, in general, any program above 10 is great for our business, right? Which has, because we generally try to run our business to a ratio of $1 of bookings for every $1 we spend in marketing and sales. And for us, sales is So really everything above 9 is good. But just the rules of anything above 10 is great for our business. Anything below 5, yeah, that was bad. We lost money there. Everything between 5 and 10, kind of a gray zone, right? Kind of depends on whether or not it's got brand impact and so on. So paid webinars, pretty awesome. Like I said earlier, they're great. So generally, webinars are highly effective for us. Trade shows, okay. Sponsored emails, I said before, kind of mixed feelings, on that. You see that. And then content syndication has worked really well for us. Now, content syndication, I should say, used to suck. This content syndication is when our content gets posted to somebody else's site, and we get leads whenever somebody downloads it. So it turns out, we've done 2 things to make content syndication work. The first is we only use mid-stage content. The stuff that attracts actual buyers, we don't use early-stage content. Second of all, we force our content syndication partners to integrate to Marketo, so that when somebody downloads the content, it inserted the lead into our system in real time, so we can follow up real time. Because now, when somebody downloads the content, they immediately get an email from Marketo saying, thank you, let's follow up. They have that mental connection. What it used to be is, they download some white paper from some third-party website, maybe not even realize it's a Marketo paper, and then a week and a half later, when we get the spreadsheet, we follow up with them, they're like, what the hell is this? Where are you standing? So that real-time connection is really what makes content syndication work for us. The other metric I have calculated, everything else on that slide is a screenshot from the product. The other metric I have calculated here is the percentage of programs, individual programs that we run in that channel that achieve better than the minimum impression ratio. Right? So it's another way to think about it. So, for example, if you look at content syndication, it had a great average. But it turns out 43% of content syndication programs don't even achieve a ratio of 5. So that's where it's important to be able to click in and understand the performance of individual programs and tune and optimize from there. So that's program dollars. The other way we sort of think about driving revenue, traffic revenue, is how things move through the revenue process. So this is what I showed you guys at the beginning. This is what it looks like in our tool, where we mapped out the stages of the revenue process. Pretty similar, basically the same set of stages, except here are zones, well, names are called zones, engage, target, lead, etc. And there's the detours, right, where people go to nurturing or take this qualified. Because we built this in the product tracks how people move through the stages. I get reports that I think of as like my Google Analytics for revenue. How many people do I have in each stage? How are they moving from stage to stage? What's the conversion rates? What are the velocities? How does that vary by product and by channel? And then I can take that data and use it to really understand the dynamics of my funnel. I won't walk you through every piece of this overall process here. I do want to point out just the ratio there of leads that actually become sales qualified versus sales qualified that become opportunities. You want to have a pinch point. Right? You generally want to be loose about the number of leads that you send to SDRs because the cost of a false positive, i.e. an extra call, is low, whereas the cost of a false negative, not calling a real deal, is very high. Right? So you want to be loose when you send to SDRs. Then you want to be really strict when you send to sales. Right? Because you want a salesperson to be like a low $1 million. When they get a lead, you want them to say, wow, awesome, thank you, marketing. Right? And that's why that 75% is so important. Right? So kind of loosen what you send to SDRs and then strict when you send to sales. My main point, though, here is once you have all these numbers, you can understand them, you use that to set your budget. So when we were doing our 2014 plan, we knew what the revenue target was, how that broke into quarter, how that broke into number of deals, and then we were able to say that number of deals, how that works into number of SQLs, MQLs, and targets. Incorporating time into account, and incorporating how many you have in inventory. Right? Because it's not just a simple waterfall, but things can be nurtured and all that, you have to take that into account. With that really sophisticated understanding, we're then able to say exactly how much we need to spend in Q1 to achieve our Q3 targets. And we can say, if you add 10% to our budget, we can do this much more. If you take 10% away, this will be the impact. Right? When you have those kinds of numbers to defend your budget, it puts you in a much stronger position. The last thing we do, this is my last slide. Okay, the last thing we do is we don't just look backwards, we actually look forwards and we make forecasts. So, we will say, okay, this month we generated 294 opportunities, versus our quota of 273. But next month we're going to generate 305. The month after that we'll generate more, and the month after that we're going to generate more. And each month we add another row to the slide. So that shows not only are we making our numbers, but our forecasts going up or down, and how trustworthy and accurate our forecasts. We've built enough trust in these forecasts that we won't hire our next salesperson at Marketo unless marketing can forecast that there will be enough pipeline for them to work on. That's a very powerful position for marketing and sales to have them working together. And as a marketer, when I can do this, as I said earlier, I'm not the arts and crafts guy. I'm not the marketer who just makes color brochures and throws parties. I'm a core part of the BMA team. Right? And that's kind of what I aspire to for all marketers. So, just as reminders and some key thoughts from the presentation. As I said at the start, the way people buy has changed, so we damn well better change our market development or we get left in market. Marketing owns a bigger piece of the revenue process, and that's a good thing, but we need to be as rigorous about defining the stages of the revenue process, and sales is about ours, and we need to do it in conjunction with sales, right? So everybody agrees on the definitions and the service level agreements. Map your content, map your buyer's journey to make sure it's all aligned so that we are always relevant. Early stage, mid stage, late stage content, kind of key themes. No lead before it's time, right? Don't send something to sales, it's premature, it'll annoy everybody. Instead, keep it back, nurture it, develop it, maybe scoring, behavioral scoring, to figure out when is the right time. And last but not least, analytics numbers are your friend as a marketer to help raise yourself to be not a cost center, but a good driver. So with that, I think we have some time for Q&A, all right? Great, thank you very much. If you want to send fan mail or hate mail, you can use @JohnMiller, and happy to entertain any questions you guys have.
As we get, I'd like to pass around. I always say, people tell me it's a good presentation, so a lot of people take notes. Obviously, these days, it's a good presentation. Everyone's snapping pictures with slides.
Well,
I saw a lot of it.
You'll also send out the slides if you want.
Send out the slides today. Also, we're recording this also today, so we'll put out the video on the website. Okay. So if you guys have questions, we'll pass the mic around. Anybody have anything they want to ask John? I definitely recommend you take advantage of this. So, any questions?
People's minds are often numb. I once gave that presentation to the audience. Someone who was a B2C marketer in the audience, and at the end, she came up to me and said, "That presentation just convinced me that I'm really glad I'm not in B2B." Question?
Yeah, first question. Content marketing, fully agree with everything you said about it. One exception, in the last 12 to 18 months, I've seen so much of so many companies piling onto it that's starting to become just a flood to the consumer.
Yeah.
What do you do with that today?
Yeah. So there is a backlash against gap content and just the flood of frankly mediocre content. What we find is, I think most people would say, is that quality content stands out. And so, we generally put our efforts into fewer, bigger, more meaningful things. And that's actually what drives our pipeline more than, lots of stuff, if you will. So for us, we write these things called definitive guides. And we do maybe 2 a year. So not a lot. Our last one was 160 pages. The one before that was 140. The one before that was 100 pages. For some reason they keep getting longer. More definitive, I guess. But these are free books that we are giving away. And they are media, they're educational. And, we had 14,000 people download the last one in the first 2 days. Right? Because I think of the documents. So I think what you're seeing, you're probably definitely seeing, is the people that are being most successful are going to be doing big meeting things to stand out, because there is such a crowd. We're about, I think, 2 months away from a complete backlash against upworthy headlines. Yeah.
I can probably be heard. For those enterprise salespeople that have geographic territory, I'm assuming you guys sell that.
Yep.
When the lead process starts, do you give them transparency or visibility to the leads that are potentially in their pipeline before you pass?
Yeah.
Okay, because that typically is a rub with salespeople.
It's a great
They
question.
may know something about that account.
Yes, it's a very good question. So just to reiterate, the question is, the stuff that isn't quote unquote sent to sales, do we give visibility to the salespeople for everything that's earlier? And for us, the answer is absolutely yes. So everything is in the CRM system, right? All the names are in the CRM system, and then they're just all very clearly marked. What stage are they in terms of their engagement? Right? So our reps will go in and say, you know what, I really want to sell to GE Energy. And we'll go to the accountant and see, we have all these people from GE Energy. That's awesome. And then they can go and say, name, or target, being nurtured, target being nurtured, name, target being nurtured. Oh, this person, is engaged. Now, we're not stopping them from going to call those other people, right? They can if they want, right? But, pretty much a rep will pretty soon learn how scoring works. And when they call those people are kind of like, yeah, that's great, that's fine. Call me in June, right? And when you call the people that marketing has said these are worth calling, they have good conversations. So we don't hide anything. And I think it's really important not to hide anything. You never want lead scoring to be perceived by sales as the lead prevention system. But at the same time, I think you build that trust over time that what market delivers is actually the business. So, in the back.
I'm going to ask a really difficult question because I know the answer is going to be it depends on the specific business and their unique pipeline. But you put up a metric about a percentage of leads that go to opportunities, percentage of leads that go to nurture, percentage of leads that go to disqualification. When you look at a Marketo implementation, and you guys run numbers to determine, on average, how many hours or what the head count would look like in order to support a successful implementation of Marketo to, so not only implement it, but proactively work all of those different functions.
Good, thanks. Next question. All right, I'll ask one. Two thoughts. I think the first is that there are probably 5 roles that you need to make sure are covered. Let's see if I can get them all right. There's a content creator. You need to make sure you have enough content. There's a strategy, like a business strategist who's thinking about, almost strategy stuff I just covered. What is the process and what are the stages and how we're going to do it? There's a marketing operations person who is, at the keyboard doing Marketo stuff, if you will. There's probably somebody who's, maybe traditionally, a sales operations more type of person who's thinking about, okay, how does this play itself out in sales? And on the sales side of things. And then there's a data analyst, somebody who's crunching numbers. It doesn't mean you need to have 5 people, right? You need to have 5 roles covered. At Marketo, we started using the system when it was me and one other guy in the whole marketing department. And so I probably did 3 of those, and he probably did 2 of them. And then as you get bigger and more sophisticated, you're going to specialize on those and hire more people. The reality is that the more you invest into building this stuff, the more you're going to get out of the system. And a big key philosophy then is, and we preach all the time, is think big, start small, quickly. Everything I just covered, we didn't start doing them day one, right? We've been doing it now for 7 years. And, we've evolved, we've adapted, and we've gotten better over time. And so I think, that's what everybody should start is you can get value with, some people spending some time, right? But then don't stop. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. So that's a really long way of saying this.
John, piggybacking on that question, back over here. Bridging the skill gap, and seeing a lot of organizations, what are your recommendations there from a technical as well as an organizational areas?
So, recommendations for
bridging the skill gap for organizations who might not have the left brain kind of marketers that are in their organizations today?
Adapt or die. You know, I mean, I mean, if we really don't, have anybody in your organization who can do that, you know, I have images of the dinosaur in my head. You know, and so I think you do need to find ways to make sure you have some of the right people in your organization. I have a hunch that everybody here probably has that, because you're the kind of people who come to something like this. But, you know, for that it's worth. You know, I just think people stress about the fact that, okay, I need to go hire somebody to do this, right? Let's just say I need to hire somebody to run Marketo or Alpha or whatever system you have. You know, I personally think it's more important to hire somebody who thinks the right way than who has experience actually using the technology. You know, the reality is, you know, even the more complicated tools aren't that hard for somebody who knows how to figure stuff out. So find somebody who is smart, somebody who, you know, I'm assuming young, but has sort of a knack for numbers and a knack for figuring things out. And you can set them on one of these systems, and with the right oversight, they'll figure out a lot of the details. I mean, at Marketo, we hire interns into, you know, be our Marketo users, and, you know, 3 or 4 months later, they get hired away from us because they're now highly trained Marketo users. And they weren't anything when we brought them in besides just smart. And now I'm keeping you from
Anyone else? Any questions?
Yeah.
Just want to kind of talk about evolving. What would be, for your top of funnel, what are some of the things that you're looking at evolving and going into 2014 and maybe probably starting to look forward already to 2015?
Sure. So the question is kind of new things, thinking about kind of at top of funnel, you know, and so on. We're spending a lot of time now with kind of account-based marketing type of techniques, especially kind of going after some of the larger enterprises. You know, so, and that's everything from personalizing the web experience, as I alluded to, for specific industries or companies as the site, to specifically buying display ads or targeting people from specific companies, you know, and putting together, you know, captive events around, you know, 4GB and that kind of stuff. So you know, we're doing, I think, more of that. We really like virtual trade shows. You know, those seem, I mean, maybe just the nature of our business is we sell to marketers, but both ones we can sponsor as well as big ones we put on our own seem to be, you know, really move the needle. So we did one last year, we did one the year before that. We'll probably do 2 this year. Let me just think of anything else that really stands out.
Anything about mobile?
You know, I'm a little perplexed by mobile in the B2B space. You know, because if anybody has smart ideas on how to use mobile for marketing B2B, you know, I'm all ears. Like the main use case I've heard that is sort of potentially interesting is related to like an event or a trade show, right? So somebody downloads the event application, you can send them a push message when they walk onto the show floor or something. We have an app at Marketo, which essentially you can download it and you get our blogs and our ebooks on your iPad, right? So that's sort of an example. But yeah, I haven't seen anybody have a killer app for B2B mobile marketing. I'm open to suggestions. You have the brilliant idea?
No. When your customers go in with Marketo, is there a pattern when they have problems? What are the things they mostly have problems with?
The question is, when customers have problems going in Marketo, is there a pattern? You know, the biggest thing that probably comes up is balancing the desire to get shit done fast with, you know, the process, the infrastructure to do it right in the long run. You know, I'll just give you an example, or 2 examples. You know, first thing somebody wants to do is, last week I was using MailChimp, but I can send an email. So how quickly can I send an email? Right? And honestly, if you want to, you can send an email pretty damn fast. Right? But you can't do it pretty damn fast if you want to do it and have it set up to properly tag people for tagging success in terms of showing the fancy ROI reports that I showed. Right? Because that's not just like an email, that's setting the email and setting it up in the way that's structured properly for later analytics. Similarly, I just want to get a webinar. That's great. And you can do that very quickly. But if you want to do it with all the tokens so that your next one can be cloned, right, that's a little bit longer. And so different companies are going to have different processes in how they want to think about build it right the first time or just do it really fast. And if you get on the wrong side of that for your company, you may not be as happy as if you get it right.
John, with the recent acquisition of Insight Terra, can you share with us what we might be able to see coming down the pipe?
Sure. So the question is, Marketo acquired Insight Terra back in December. What's coming down the pipe? So I've alluded to it a little bit already. Insight Terra is all about personalizing the web mobile experience based upon somebody's industry, company, or one-to-one personalized information. So, when you come to our website and it changes those buttons because you're a customer, that's Insight Terra. If you're from GE and you come to our website and when you're targeting you with a specific GE ad and you're on CNN, that's Insight Terra. So we're already doing some of that ourselves, and then the product is just going to allow our customers increasing the ability to make sure that their customers and prospects get targeted messages, whether you're emailing them or they're coming to you. All the people asking the same questions. I'm happy to answer them, but it suggests to me that we might want to get a break. And then a smaller group can ask me questions of people who don't care if they need.
So you mentioned your SDRs.
Yes.
They must make outbound calls from the database, or is there inbound function as well?
So the SDRs, do they do outbound or inbound? So, we do have a contact sales button on our website. We do have a phone number. And so when that happens, it goes to the SDRs. For us, it's the same SDRs. So when one of these happens, then whoever grabs it gets it. But they're mostly doing outbound calls, but to these qualified leads. So they're not doing what a lot of people traditionally call as outbound, right? Because they're not kind of cold calling, they're following up on what maybe inbound marketing is.
We'll take one more, two. Maybe.
Going back to the local question that Scott asked.
You've got the brother.
No, I don't have the answer because I was waiting for you to tell me. Has there been any type of testing, or you haven't done any testing yet to say whether a web-based, a phone-based website that's modeled for the phone as opposed to not being modeled?
Right.
Have there been any testing in that to determine opening up the email?
Oh, sure. So yeah, your emails and your website and your landing pages should be mobile responsive. Just, that's kind of, I think, a no-brainer whether it's B2C or B2B. Even our blog, right? We email it out. I'm getting older, I can't read these tiny little fonts if it's not a responsive email. And so, yeah, I think, there are tests. We haven't done them, but you can see the market Sherpa that if your email is not responsive to the mobile device, that your overall response rates go down fairly significantly. You have to remember, more than half emails today are open for the first time on a mobile device. Right? So people are obviously doing the whole kind of clearing stuff out on their phones, and then following up someone on the device, but increasingly they are responding on the device too, which means that if the click doesn't go to a good web experience, you're not going to get the conversion as well. So I don't have the exact data, but yes, that stuff has to happen. That's to me saving table space.
I'm sorry. All right. You by now, after all these years, have a pretty good profile of the kinds of customers that be your best customers. Now, it appeared that most of your activities are driven from inbound. Do you have a similar outbound program knowing that these kinds of companies and these kinds of industries maybe would be a real good prospect for market automation? And so do you have any outbound
so, I wouldn't want that